a complete street study. Oh,
No, I went ahead because what you're saying should be on the recording
okay.
so people
So
can
they
hear
did
it.
it. They got a complete street study. And then they turned around and hired Fair and Peers to write a grant for them. So I talked to these people and I said, well, what did it cost you to hire Fair and Peers to write this grant application? And they said it cost us $5,000. And as a result of their $5,000 grant writing, using this consulting firm, they received $3 million of a $4 million project. So I thought that was pretty exciting. I like that math. If you
That's
can get 3 million
that's the
for,
kind of math we need.
yeah, that is exactly. So the biggest issue, it's not apples to apples because that county, like so many other counties, Fresno County, Monterey County, Santa Barbara County, Santa Cruz, they all have sales tax that goes towards transportation, and that sales tax money is used for matching. And so that allows them, that gives them the $1 million to match to the $3 million. And our county does not have that. We do not have a sales tax for transportation. We almost had it. It was on the ballot a few years back and it missed by just over 600 votes. And so there is a possibility that they'll think about trying to bring that back. But I haven't heard the latest on that, so I can't share any more. But anyway, that's why I'm excited about this information, and I'm excited about how we can leverage it to benefit our community. So let's go ahead and get started. It's 6:08. Oh, somebody else is coming in.
Tom Cross, I will admit.
Great. Great. We'll wait for Tom to come in. Hi, Tom.
Hello. Sorry I'm late.
It's okay. So we're going to go ahead and do roll call. Trish.
Present.
Lynette is a no. Tom.
Present.
Meg is a no. Seamus is here. Jeff Krebs is here. And Jeff Bartell and Jim Hale, I think, are coming, but I will check them off today. Okay. Oh, I think he's on his way now. Announcements. Does anybody have any announcements that they want to make?
LOCAC is looking for a member in District 3. So if anybody knows somebody.
And District 3
is on the other side of South Bay Boulevard going east.
And isn't it also up in like the Highland Bayview Oaks? Doesn't it go up the hill?
I would have to check. I think so.
I think so, because that's where Sandra Saroff lives, and she was District 3.
Okay.
Anyway, there's a map on the website. If you don't know what district you're in, you can look on that map, and it will show you where it is. Anything else? Any other announcements? Okay. So do we have any public comments for items that are not on the agenda? Hear anything? Okay, so let's start with our agenda items. And we're going to start with the Safe Trek Safety Assessment, the final draft. So I don't know about you, but I found that most of these suggestions are not complicated, right? As far as creating high visibility at the crosswalks, stop bars, so you make a line 4 feet before you get to the crosswalk that says, okay, cars, you're supposed to stop here, right? Those are like simple, logical things that shouldn't be very expensive. What did you guys think?
One of the things I noticed in the Baywood Business District is the parking on both sides. That seems like a good idea.
Mhm.
I'm familiar with back-end parking, and I go, tourists,
Mhm.
maybe that's weird, but you could put diagonal parking on both sides,
Mhm.
and
Increase
that
the
might
parking.
reduce the speeds in there.
I think the reason they suggested the back-in parking for the business district is because they'd like to see bike lanes. And bike lanes and backing coming out of a parking spot where you're backing out, then you can have an accident versus if you backed into the parking spot and now you're coming out in the front ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Mhm.
it does. That's a really good explanation, because
I
I've
think
seen it
I'm pretty
without
sure that's what
explanations and
they
go like,
were concerned about. Because it's so wide there. They were like, wow, this is a lot of space. You have all this room and it's not really being efficiently used. And there's so many people. We actually purposely went there on a Monday when there was farmers market, so they could see all the people coming in, walking, biking, on their little scooters. So they got a real feeling for what happens down there as far as traffic flow. And they said you could be a lot more efficient and make this a lot easier for bicycle traffic. And that was their suggestion there.
And they did that down in Pismo already, where you have to back in on one street, you have to back in on all of the parking spots, and they're on a diagonal. So I was watching that when I was waiting for somebody, and it's going to be a learning curve for a lot of people to back into a parking spot. They weren't good at it, but
Well, they
I think
weren't.
no.
Plus, so many of our cars have backing or cameras backing up and cameras going.
I know it should
Should
be
be getting
easier.
easier.
I'm just telling you, it's the parallel parking curve, It's easy now with all the backup cameras, but it's still going to be a learning curve.
What
Trish,
other comments?
Trish, did you see anybody try to not back into those back
Oh
in?
yeah, I did. I saw people just give up and pull in the wrong way, because
That's what I would,
they couldn't do it.
yeah, that's what I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how would you do that? The angle's in the wrong direction. You'd have you do that. Other comments about what they saw in the suggestions.
Well, the restriping or repainting the red zone, frankly, doesn't need to go anywhere. All we need to do is put a road request in. It's an existing issue on a common thing and I guess we could look at that red one and then actually look around the other schools. I don't know what all the reds are, but just put a road request in, say, get the red back.
Right.
But the other ones do look very simple. I mean, delineators or whatever it is to put those bulb outs in some of the corners in the schools. It's pretty low bucks thing. Low bucks still means some bucks, which probably means the Board of Supervisors is going to have to agree to making a change to the road design, but put it in process.
Mm-hmm. What did you think about the parking? So now let's just look at Monarch Grove Elementary School. And they talk about on Los Osos Valley Road, the no parking bike lane. Obviously there's no place for those people to park.
Yeah, that's where I struggle. I mean, we've taken the bike lane, which is an important component, but I guess if I was a homeowner there and I looked at my house, I really don't have, I had parking, public parking. Yeah, it was in front of my house. Most residentials have it in front of their house. Was it an expectation when I purchased the house there to be able to park, and now I can't? So I guess I'm a little bit sympathetic with the homeowner there, if that's really what's happening, but I don't know a better solution. So,
and it seems like I'm trying to sort of think about every time I drive down there, but it definitely seems like it's more of a problem right at Doris where there's that middle lane, the left turn lane to, to turn up towards the houses than it is sort of farther back on the street. And I assume it's just because, kind of, Jeff, as you were pointing out, right? Like we've squeezed the shoulder at that particular intersection, to accommodate the bike lane, the left turn lane, and the traffic lanes.
Yeah, it's very hard to prioritize a bike lane over parking because you're going to lose that battle. A parked car isn't going to move to the side when a bike comes along. And so, but the safety of the cyclists is pretty non-existent on Los Osos Valley Road. I mean, we have a real issue there. And I'm not sure that this suggestion solves it, but it's something that we could bring to the county and ask them to weigh in on as far as how to improve the safety. I know there are children who live up in Cabrillo who ride their bikes down there, and it's just really not very safe. And not to mention all the people who are riding out to Montana de Oro, those brave people that ride out to Montana de Oro and out again.
Yeah, I don't.
So anything else about this first location?
Well, on that one issue with the bike lane, pedestrians and stuff, frankly, that's part of the LOVR study. I mean, having this study pointing out that's a problem area, I don't think we need to be doing much more on it until we see what they're going to do about it, because it's part of their comprehensive study, and probably we just prioritize our time elsewhere.
Okay, that's a really good point. That's it.
Yeah,
Although
I would agree. I'm just looking at the map that they, the aerial photo, and pretty much all their kind of suggestions are along LOVR, and I think have been echoed. If you look at that interactive map that the county's been doing, you're going to see those comments basically repeated.
right.
So,
Yep.
I mean, I would focus on the moving that stop lane back 4 feet. I mean, those, again, are very simple things. And maybe we can even get that with a road request, and it doesn't have to go through all of this stuff. I just don't know what county standards, if that meets San Luis Obispo County standards. But based on this, my guess is just regular roads could go out and paint the stripe a little different. I know when we had Mike Britton, he was able to go and, black out a double yellow line that wasn't supposed to be there. It didn't have to go and be studied a whole bunch. He just got it done. So.
Right. Well, that would be nice. We'll see. We'll see if we can make that happen. So then, good comment. Let's move on to location number 2, Baywood Elementary School. One of the big issues that we saw there, because we were there, we tried to get there in the morning when kids were arriving. We actually talked to the crossing guard there. And one of the issues that he talked about was that the parents bringing the kids to school would pull up to the shoulder of the road. Okay, so now here you have a crosswalk, right? And then the parent would drive up to the edge of the crosswalk and drop their kids off and actually kind of block the crosswalk. Am I describing that right, Jeff? I mean,
yeah,
is that what you
that's
got?
exactly right. Yeah, they were, and so then it's a hindrance for sight and everything else.
Yeah. What was dangerous, because you have kids coming into the crosswalk and you have this car pulling into the crosswalk. It was kind of crazy. So that's why they talk about installing curb extensions using flexible posts along those edges so that it would stop cars from pulling off there and using that as like a temporary stopping point for dropping off their kids. So I don't know, that's obviously a little bit more complicated than just painting a line, but it certainly sounded like a good idea to me, because not only was it dangerous for the kids, but it was really dangerous for the crossing guard. Some of this other stuff's pretty good, but I was interested to hear what you thought about their suggestion to convert Santa Maria Avenue into a one-way street.
Well, I know we've discussed that before. I'm not sure where we get that project off Hot Dead Center unless we had some direction from Bruce to Public Works to have him do some sort of a quick evaluation. I mean, we spun on that type of thing before, but at least in my view, it seems like it has to be as Public Works has to look at it and give the pros and cons from their standpoint.
Yeah, you see a lot of one-way streets in Slow City, which allows for accommodating more pedestrians and cyclists. So that Santa Maria is a very low traffic street because it's dirt when you get to 13th Street. So it's not a lot of through traffic there compared to obviously something like El Moro. So something to talk about with the county. Anything else that came to your attention that we want to focus on? And the reason I'm asking you for your feedback here is because my intention is to take this to our council meeting on the 25th, where Bruce Gibson will be there. And if he's not there, then Blake will be there. And I want to ask them to get involved and get Public Works to look at this and start, weighing in on how much of this we can accomplish with the little money that we do have.
I would just say the section where they're talking about the El Moro bike trail, having sort of ridden that to get to soccer games and pick up kids and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm glad they want to sort of install these crossings. I don't fully understand why it's not a stop sign there, along all of those numbered streets, right? 12th, 11th, 13th, all the way over to the middle school, because I think a lot of times, at least in my experience, if you're on a bike riding along the path and you and a car are sort of approaching it at the same time, a lot of times cars will stop and nobody's quite sure on who's supposed to go first. That may be sort of beyond the scope of this, study, but I think like that's that would just be a question that would be interesting to get an answer to. Like, why not just have it be a bike path with cars deferring or stopping at each of those intersections?
Yeah, Jeff, remind me when we walked this, when we walked the El Moro bike path, what they said to us is, this is a bike path, it's not a pedestrian path.
Yeah,
That's the classification. And there are yield signs for the bikes to yield to the car traffic, right? So are you suggesting that there be stop signs for the bikes or stop signs for the cars?
Admittedly, like in my experience, you get middle schoolers riding their bikes to and from school. They're not stopping, right? They're going straight through those intersections, and so I would flip it and make it stop signs for the cars. We can try and teach the middle schoolers to yield, but like that may, right.
Well, and we're not going to stop people from walking on the path anyway. Right. So it has to be mixed. It's, and so,
but Deborah, I want to chime in on Seamus's point. I mean, Tara was saying last week that, kids on the middle schoolers on their bikes are just zooming along on the path and they're not looking at the cars.
Yeah.
And, you know, Carrie almost hit one and a neighbor almost hit one. And if it is a designated bike path, as they indicate in the study, then there should be, the cars should yield to the bike, since it is to be, you know, it's there to be, quote, a safe route to school in some respects. So I think that's a great suggestion by Seamus. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, Deborah, was you talked about getting this report to the attention of Supervisor Gibson. I think just as imperative is asking Supervisor Gibson and the Board of Supervisors how we can get some of these common sense suggestions implemented that don't seem to cost a lot of money, but really could have a big impact on safety in this community.
Yep. I agree with you. As far as having a sign, what they recommend is a W11-15 and a W16-. I don't know what those signs are. I'm assuming that's some sort of a sign that says pedestrian bike crossing. That would be, yeah, if somebody would look that up, maybe we could have a conversation about that. So that instead of a actual stop sign, it would be like, okay, be aware that this is a pedestrian crossing. And that's why they're elevated anyway. But still, people do. It's tricky, right?
Yeah, I just looked it up. It's one of those diamond shaped signs with a bike and a pedestrian symbol, and that's what it is.
Okay. Well, that shouldn't be too expensive. That's a starting point at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll make a little picture of that. Okay. And really better bike lanes, which is what I'm seeing, you know, in all of this. Yeah, okay, so shall we move on? Are we done with that? Shall we move on to? Okay, Baywood Business District. What are your thoughts here? I'll just share with you the comment that they made when they were down there. They're like, this avenue is too big and it's not being efficiently utilized. And it actually, whenever you have a really wide road, we know it makes people drive faster. And so if you don't want people to drive fast in a business district, if you want them to be more cautious, then you have to squeeze it in. That creates traffic calming, right?
Mhm.
So, thoughts?
Is angled back in parking mean you back into the spot?
Yes.
Look, face it with your car facing in the direction of traffic, essentially?
Correct.
Or is it backwards from that?
No,
Like a,
it's what you said first. So
Okay,
you
so
pull
when you-
forward and then
when
you
you-
back into the spot and then you,
okay,
and that is because they want, if you put bike lanes on the inside, then the car coming out of the parking spot would see a bike coming.
sure,
Versus
okay.
if you were backing out.
So you'd pull out forward rather than back out.
Correct.
Okay,
It's standard operating procedure, actually, in the company I worked for. Any company vehicle was always backed into a site if it was, unless it was posted, you couldn't do that.
mhm.
And I even know in the Parks Service government vehicles, same thing. It's a safer, I guess it's determined that it's a safer way to approach it. You've got a little more control of your time and sight when you're backing back in. When you're leaving, you're less familiar with the surroundings of the traffic going back and forth. Anyway, at least that's the theory. And that's why they're proposing it. And a lot of people use that.
Hey,
I
David,
have a question.
you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I have a question about the back-in parking. It seems to me, Trish was talking about people having a tough time backing in. It seems to me that the planners should allow an extra foot in width or something for a back-end parking. That would make it so that people would have an easier time backing into it. And I don't know if they make them exactly the same width as front end diagonal, or if they actually give a little extra room, but that would make sense to me. I'm no traffic engineer. Makes sense.
I have no idea. That's a good question. Wider spaces. Okay. Any other comments about this location?
Well, I'm a little bit struggling on what they're really proposing for continuous sidewalk all along Third. I'm not sure if they're saying put sidewalks on both sides of the street all the way to Santa Maria, or what's being proposed there. The hotel and everything has some sidewalk space, and maybe they're just talking about filling in that side, but it says on both sides, and so I really don't know what that means.
Well, as you probably know, that street has a sidewalk along behind the hotel and the building next to it.
Right.
And High Street Deli. And then across the street, just that little end business strip mall kind of development there where Nardoni's is, they have a little sidewalk that ends. And so you have two sidewalks that end, only one actually goes to the corner on the east side of the street. So the one on the west side of the street starts in the middle, kind of away from it's a lot away from the corner. So you have the sidewalk that's kind of goes to nowhere, starts in the middle, and so you get my point. There
Yeah,
are two sidewalks that don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So at least one should go the entire length, given the amount of traffic sometimes during farmers markets, especially.
I don't disagree. I wasn't sure when they were talking about as the east side, whether that actually would take a lot of traffic all the way down to El Moro. But anyway, that one puzzled me a little bit, talking about both sides.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, all the way to El Moro. That was your
Well,
question.
I don't know
right?
if it's all the way to El Moro or not. It just said both
Yeah,
sides.
they didn't bring a map for this one.
Yeah.
They didn't include a map. So we don't know.
Well, there's no complete sidewalk on the El Moro as it curves down to Second either, and on the side
Right.
opposite the trees.
Right.
And that would be a place where it would make sense to have a sidewalk, it seems like, that was, took you up to the corner at least. Also on Third Street, one of those pieces of sidewalk has a tree that grows in a way that makes it so you can't stay on the sidewalk.
I think they just removed that tree.
Oh, did they? Oh,
We
good.
noticed it was gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it was about a month ago they came and took it out.
Well, one thing we know, unlike the painting of the lines and putting up of a sign, a sidewalk is an expensive proposition. One block of sidewalk a few years back was $250,000. So I'm not going to hold my breath on the sidewalk. Let's put it that way. But the lines and the signs, I think, we can ask for that. Okay, so are we done with this? Any other comment? Anything else you want me to know or say when our time comes in front of the council?
Looks good.
All right, so let's move on. Here we have Ted Blockley is joining us tonight. He wrote me an email specifically about Cabrillo Estates, and he had done quite a bit of research. And so, Ted, I'm going to let you take over here and just talk about your thoughts and your research regarding local roads and slowing the roll.
Yeah, that's the whole theme, slowing the roll, because I like to walk and noticed how much of the walking surface is sort of impacted by car traffic and lack of sidewalks. And it's an interesting thing up in Cabrillo because there are curbs on both sides of the street. And the street is a normal width. It's, I think, 36 feet. And parking on both sides. So by the time you take out the parking, you're left with 2 lanes of traffic and no place for the pedestrian to go. And so City of Slow, they take away, parking on one side only. That wouldn't go over very well. Installing sidewalks, we just heard, was expensive. So one of the third things that's available is, hey, slow the street down. And that's something that's available. May not be politically correct or doesn't fit into the current scheme of things, but it is available and it's done in other California locations. I think this can also be applied on Los Osos Valley Road. I know they recently lowered it to 35, but any place where there's a residential street, as far as I know, you can make it a 25-mile-an-hour zone or a 20-mile-an-hour zone. And it may seem extreme, but that may be what it takes, since the streets themselves don't meet the current standards for pedestrians, bicycles, and cars all mixed together. Cabrillo's got steep streets, somewhat tight curves, vertical curves, or the hill turns into a flat spot at a street corner or something, and it's tough to see over there. They put a sign up that says hill blocks view. It doesn't say watch out for pedestrians coming up the hill. And so anyway, those are my thoughts, and it seems like a good way to approach it. I did some study on all of that. And, the number of people killed by cars has gone up so much that despite all the safety features in cars, the increase in pedestrian deaths has really exceeded any of the gains we made with safer cars. So,
And
those are my thoughts.
I would add that cycling deaths are up considerably as well in the last 2 years in this country as well.
So this is a well-known problem, and certainly lowering the speed limit is the right thing to do. The problem is that people don't obey the speed limit.
Yeah.
And Jim was telling me just the other day, talk about what happened on Rodman when you had a car coming down Rodman.
So I was coming up Rodman, about to turn left on Travis, and a car was coming down Rodman from the top of Rodman, the steep part of Rodman along, where Bowie and is, but he was coming down the hill. He was probably doing 50 to 55 miles an hour. I had never seen a car going that fast, and he lives up there. I can tell you which car it was, but people do fly in Cabrillo Estates. And to your point about speed limit, lowering the speed limit, I think it's great, but who's going to enforce that? I think I've seen I've seen a policeman patrol up here several times, but I've only seen a policeman kind of hanging out on Rodman maybe twice in 14 years. So I don't see a lot of enforcement.
No, but some of it's, I think it's just the overall ambience of it all. I'm familiar with the city of Palo Alto's policies on, traffic speeds and so forth, and they don't have any hills to contend with really there. But I don't think they have a speed limit that goes over 35 in the entire town. And they've got a roadway there that Page Mill Road, the Oregon Expressway, which I think it's 10,000 trips a day. That's a whole lot of traffic. That's 10 times what you see on Los Osos Valley Road. It's a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit along that entire thing. So it's a matter of acculturation, I guess.
And I would chime in. I mean, this is, like if you could do one thing, right, to improve pedestrian and cycling safety, it would be slow cars down, right? And most of the sort of studies and the articles that I've read indicate drivers drive as fast as they feel comfortable. And this is kind of what gets to, they ignore the speed, LOVR in the downtown area is marked at 25 miles an hour, but everybody's driving 40 because it's wide, because there's multiple lanes. And so, we may be like sort of, we made these streets 50 or 60 years ago, but I think when we talk about sort of new ways to stripe the streets, new ways to put the parking in, we really ought to push the county, in my opinion, to shrink the streets, right? 36 feet across may be the sort of standard width, but if we're in a pedestrian area where people are walking, where people are riding horses, we can make it much narrower. I mean, I've lived in Washington, D.C. and Denver, where the streets are narrow, right? I mean, there's parking on both sides and everybody has to drive at 15 miles an hour if they don't want to destroy their car. And it makes it much safer for bikes and pedestrians. So, again, like we're dealing with 60-year-old infrastructure, but at least, I think we should, like a priority ought to be to shrink the width of the streets, because that's the only thing I think that really slows drivers down.
Agreed.
Mhm.
That is,
And
that's
and, you
well
know,
said.
Petro Road actually predates pavement, cars, bicycles.
hmm,
It's on the very first USGS map of the area.
Wow. Well, let me ask a question. What do you think would happen if in Cabrillo they painted bike lanes on both sides? So now you have the illusion that the vehicular space is less because, oh, here's a bike lane here. Obviously, people are going to be walking in that bike lane. Cyclists are going to be in that bike lane. And then there's bike lane here. And then what's left is the middle.
But you have so many people who park their cars on Rod.
Yeah, but it's not as much
Rodman.
as on Los Osos Valley Road. It's not like car after car after car. There is a lot of parking there. Well,
There's a
maybe we
lot.
just make parking on one side, like Tom mentioned.
Mhm.
Parking on one side may be, I think you'd have a tough time getting the whole community up here to behind it. But like you say, if you stripe both sides to demarc the roadway, that would be a helpful thing.
It would give the illusion. And even if people parked in those areas and you had to walk around, well, you have to do that now anyway. But at least you would have this illusion to the person in the car that they have to stay in a more narrow space, and it might encourage them to slow down.
Yeah, and for example, one of the things about Cabrillo that nobody seems to put at the forefront is that Rodman is the only street in there with 30-mile-an-hour speed limits. Every other street is 25. And people, my car says it's 30 on Travis because it reads the speed limit signs. There aren't any other speed limit signs.
Well, maybe we need some signs.
That would be helpful, and maybe they could even drop things lower. But that's, I think there needs to be a big sort of concerted effort to change attitudes, because that 85% rule, which is the one where people drive where they're most comfortable, says that 85% of the traffic is going to go to the speed, and you can't change that speed without an act of Congress, literally. That means that 1 in 6 people driving by you is speeding.
Well, it's probably way more than that.
Well, that's true, but people also tend to drive the speed limit, sometimes with a cushion, 5 or 10 miles over.
Yeah, I mean, we see it when you're coming up Los Osos Valley Road, making that curve onto Pecho, where the road is all of a sudden exploded out, literally. And when people hit that section, they just take off because it's wide and it's going uphill. And the poor people who are trying to cross out of Vista de Oro, literally, I stopped the other day because there was a woman standing there to go in the crosswalk, and she could see a car way in the distance coming from the other direction. She would not cross. She was like, just go on, because she wasn't even going to take one step out into that crosswalk unless there was 0 cars coming, because it
Yeah.
simply isn't safe. Now, if
And-
there
and-
were those stop lines on either side, and there's some other things too I've seen. There's a thing on either side where you can have sort of a post where little flags are stuck with yellow flags on them, and you pick it up. You pick up your little flag and you walk across the street with this flag so that you raise your visibility. And then when you get to the other side, you put it in the post on that side. And I thought, okay, well, that's kind of dorky, but I bet it works.
I've actually been in a community that does that. I thought I was flabbergasted and it was working where they were.
Well,
I figured all the flags get ripped off after a period of time, but
well, maybe, but it can't be that. You know, if you wanted to cross that intersection and you wanted to make sure that people saw you, you would grab a flag. I would grab a flag.
yeah.
So it's just an idea, and these are low cost things, right? At least in my opinion, they can't be like can't be like a cost of a sidewalk.
But how
Yeah.
much does it cost, Deborah, to have one of those crosswalk things like they have on Los Osos Valley Road where you push a button, the lights flash in the road? Obviously, you
know.
have to put in, wiring and the electric lights, but those things don't always work either, but you create a higher visibility.
I don't know the cost, and I don't know if they can be solar, if, I have no idea, but that's really where we're going. We're going to go and find out, because I did ask, I did ask Blake, Bruce's legislative aide. I said, well, what if we wanted to pay for some of these things ourselves? And he said, it can be done. So if Cabrillo wants a crosswalk across Rodman, we could raise money and do that. Now, my opinion is the county should pay for it. And if we need to like create an incentive for them to do that, then, I'd be willing to do that. But I don't think we need to be paying for all of that stuff ourselves. And that kind of brings me to, well, the road fees, but let me show you a couple of pictures here if I can get my act together. I feel all out of practice with doing my share screen.
Yeah, one point, I forget what
go ahead.
that one's name said, the 85% factor. That is a true rule, but there was a new California law, and I don't recall what it is, but in residential areas, actually the county has more autonomy to make adjustments, and they don't have to necessarily adhere to the 85% rule. Now, whether the county of San Luis Obispo County has adopted that rule, I don't know, but we do have that capability.
I think they have. That's why they dropped the speed limit into Montana de Oro.
Okay.
Yeah, and they have the ability under that rule to, in a residential zone, drop the speed to 20 or 25 without any traffic study.
Right. Okay.
And it needs to be pointed out that applies from Palisades all the way to basically Monarch Grove Elementary School. along
Really?
Los Osos Valley Road.
Really? It could
Yes.
be 20, 25?
It could be 25 there if they so choose,
Uh-huh.
because they have rules for how many houses along one side of the street. And obviously that's the case in much of that area.
True, that's true. So because it's so residential.
Yeah. And that's probably the worst part of Los Osos Valley Road is that one section.
Yeah, I agree. So since we're talking about Cabrillo, I'm just going to show you, these are some pictures I snapped while I was on my dog walk. Cabrillo has never had their streets redone in the entire time that it has been in existence. These are not even the worst of them. These just happen to be the ones I saw this morning, where the road is completely degraded. Jeff Bartel, do you remember the name of what it was that they used to do these roads? It was some kind of chip thing.
I don't remember.
Anyway,
It's called
we
chip
talked
Chip
to,
seal, maybe, yeah.
yeah, we talked to Josh Roberts. He's head of maintenance and road, and he said that stuff's terrible. It doesn't last. Well, I mean, I guess it did last for a long time, but it was just crumbling. And so we need some attention up here. And I'm sure there are other roads that need some attention. And so I don't necessarily travel in those areas, but those of you who live in other areas of Los Osos that need attention, and Jeff Krebs is really good at this. He's got speed dial to the transportation department at the county. But please make a note of it. Take a picture, make a note of it, and bring it to this committee so that we can talk about it, and then we can bring it to the attention of the county. And that brings me to the road fees. So if you read the document that I sent you, that was the latest document regarding road fees. Let me see if I can pull it up. So here we are. Here's the important part at the very end. First of all, let me mention this. On page 3, it talks about our road fees, what they are, and they bumped up a little bit. But I went to the county website and I looked at Nipomo, because Nipomo is the nearest community to ours. It is unincorporated. It has slightly more people. It has 1,000 more people than we do. It's a coastal community. And I went to see what their road fees were like. And their road fees were like, for a resident, like $10,000, $12,000. And I was like, why is that? Why are their road fees so different from our road fees? So I wrote an email to Josh Roberts and I asked that question, and he said, oh, it's because Nipomo is on the 101 and they have the need of a new interchange getting on and off the freeway. And he said it's about $25 million. And because of that, they increase the road fees that they have to. So these are for permits. Like if you get a permit for a house, you have to pay this fee, right? So if you get a permit in Nipomo, you're going to pay a higher road fee because you're going to be paying for that future interchange on the 101. And I thought, well, okay, that makes total sense, right? Except we have Los Osos Valley Road and South Bay Boulevard that are listed on our project list. And those two projects, and these are old figures because they've been on there for many, many years, are $10 million. So I think we need some updating in terms of the cost and the priority of what needs to happen here in our community. These fees probably should be adjusted up, in my opinion. And here's the reason why, if I get to the bottom of it. All right, here we go. This is what we have in our road improvement fund, $87,771. Do you want to know how much Nipomo has? over $5 million in their road improvement fund. So the things we've talked about tonight, the crosswalks, the flashing lights, the improvements to the corners and the part, we could pay for all of that if we had road fees that would support it. The other thing that we have a problem with is that we have no building here. You can see only 3 permits were issued in 2022, 2023, and that's because of the water situation. So probably we're not going to get $5 million, but we could probably increase a little bit some of this funding so that we could do some of these improvements. Now, that's not going to be the whole story, obviously. I'm going to get out of here so you can see my face. The other side of the story is, what's the county, what happens to all the money that we pay into the county, our property taxes and so forth. So I did a little investigation there as well. And I did a comparison between the amount of property tax that was collected by the county in the year 2018, 2019, and what was collected in the year 22, 23. And I said, okay, what's the difference? Because we know we haven't been building any houses. There are essentially no new homes. Those 3 that got permits, well, they haven't actually been built because the Coastal Commission shot them down and stopped them. So we know what it is. We know that people are coming in to Los Osos, they're buying homes, and they're buying them at very high prices, right? The home behind me, I don't know what that house was worth when she bought it, but it went for $1.6 million, right? Trust me, the lady who owned that house, what do you think she had, Jim? $500,000 in it? Anyway, it's just an example. They're getting a lot of tax money from us. We're not necessarily getting the bang for the buck. The difference between the 2 years, $5 million. We gave the county $5 million more in 22, 23, and we had no new buildings. It's just because people have come in, bought these homes, remodeled, and the tax base has increased. So I think we have a story to tell here. I think we have a, we have a need. We have a need. We have a story, and we're contributing to the county. And so what we want to redirect some of this money back into the community. And I went to the Board of Supervisors meeting. I did a public comment, and I talked about the road fees. I talked about the fact that we are in a prohibition here in Los Osos, that there cannot be any building, that we have this need, and that our road fee fund is only $87,000. And I don't think the majority of those people had, really knew what our status was, but they know it now. And so when I go back and say, all right, by the way, you're now getting $5 million more from us, we really want to see some of that money redirected into our community. And I think we can make some headway.
Mm-hmm.
Deborah, can I ask, was the $5 million specifically Los Osos money, or is that countywide?
No. So I asked the county collector, because what they do, it's all public knowledge, but they only break out the cities. And then all the unincorporated areas, they combine together. So I said, I want you to break out Los Osos, and I do not want you to put the sewer supplemental in there. The sewer supplement is for the sewer, right? I just want to know the straight property tax, what you collected in, 18, 19, and what you collected in 22, 23. And that's what they came up with. It was over $5 million difference. Comments? Ideas?
Couple comments on the road fee calculation. Our transportation committee, I guess, previously did a lot of work with the county on this and in understanding it. And you said that the capital projects that are in that table, which again kind of went through with the community plan and then the update after that, that table of projects is what we require to get from whatever you want to call it. We're at 14,000 or 15,000, whatever the number is, to 16.5, the type of projects they need to accommodate up to the maximum of 16.5. My understanding is the last time we looked at it, those were accurate costs at that juncture, but they didn't want to have to go back to the Board of Supervisors every year. And so they ended up putting in, I think they're using a producer price index or something to that extent. So what they're doing is they're putting each year, because it's a fairly extensive exercise to figure out how to escalate it each year. I was assuming, and I haven't really looked at it this go around, but I'm assuming this is just a calculated escalation. To your point on Napomo, well, I don't know what the projected community plan of Napomo is. If they're at 16,000 and they're supposed to be at 25,000 or what, I don't know what the number is. And that requires an interchange. I could see how that type of thing could be ballooned up much higher than us. It just, you have to kind of peel it back to see what went in to make them $10,000. Why they have so much money in their balance right now, I don't have a clue. I did notice the Board of Supervisors, their next meeting, they're approving an $800,000 line item to do a design on an interchange. I didn't recognize the name of the interchange, but it sounds like maybe that's this Oak Knolls or something to that extent. Might be the Napomo thing pushing forward. So to the extent we've got this $5 million change in taxes. Oh, the other aspect, and then I actually kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but it was like, it was water over the dam at that point. The part of our CIP table also is done by how much, I guess, out of community traffic is being going along LOVR. And I forget what number it was, but it was like, I don't know, 26, 27% was a factor on outside of the community. Factoring into that, they lowered that number to 20%. And, I'm sure they had some data to tell them they needed to do 20%. But when I start seeing we got 600,000 people and going to MDO, I'm really struggling with that. If you change that, 26 to 20 to whatever, is that really going to materially change the number to fight the battle? I don't know. But it just, the whole thing kind of feels funny to me, the way that this is all working out. But I think your point, the fact that we are in a building moratorium and our property values are actually probably disproportionately going up because there aren't alternatives for people to buy when they want to buy here. I think we're taking the brunt of it. Now, if I look at it on the other side from the county, the way that the state now has it set where, well, you say somebody bought a $1.6 million house behind you, they may have carried a tax base from LA or San Francisco. If they sold a house, there's now provisions where you can carry your old tax base in some fashion. And so they may not be paying taxes on $1.6 million, but it's a very complex thing, but it does feel like we're a little bit being shortchanged here.
Well, yes, and thank you for bringing up the MDO traffic, because that was the other point I made. We've got nothing in our road fund, $87,000. We have tremendous need here. We don't have sidewalks. We don't have safe routes to school. Yet, of all the communities in this county, we're one of the most visited by tourists. all the people going into MDO. So I asked them, I said, what other strategy can you provide that will allow us to, you know, get our needs met when it comes to road and transportation? Because we're not going to do it through our road fees. That's not going to happen. So we'll see. I think I got their attention, and we're going to keep talking this narrative and keep bringing it up. And then I didn't have the tax information at that point, because whether somebody's paying that tax or they brought a tax base from somewhere else, it doesn't matter. The fact is they've got $5 million more.
Yeah,
So
they
and every
collected it.
year they're going to get more and more as more of these houses get sold.
Yeah, the tact I would probably try to take also is the county's an unincorporated community or residential area. I forget what the terminology is. The road, what's considered acceptable is a grade D, but if you go to a rural road, it's grade C, and that's regardless of if you got pedestrians competing for the space in the road space through the county. There's no distinction if the road itself is multimodal, the road surface is multimodal, or if it's current design and there's sidewalks adjacent to it and there's bike lanes and everything else. In my view, one tact we could look at is seeing if there's a way that a community like this, if the road clearly has to be multimodal, raise it to a C or a B or something like that. What that would actually do is then say they would show more failure roads, which then encourages them to then have to make those type of improvements. Right now, if you go and you look, except for those few CIP projects, roads are all considered acceptable to the county. And I just think it's a bad metric that they have for us.
Mm-hmm. Because we're under a rural standard, is that what you're saying?
It's not rural, it's unincorporated, it's not residential, I forget the terminology. Rural is actually, I think, if you were going out on one of the roads between here and not Morro Bay, but Turry Road is probably a rural road, or it's not necessarily a residential area. Again, I've kind of lost track of the exact terminology, but you can go and you can look at their LOSS evaluation and find out what the designations are. But I mean, this has been something that was bugging me all along ever since I started working on some of this stuff, but it's just what we have, and I just moved along.
Well, level of service is what this county has a study on all of that. And I think that they, Back Bay or South Bay Boulevard and Los Osos Valley Road, the left turn lane, they want to put a double left turn lane in there to alleviate the low level of service there. But the rest of our streets are just sort of like way under capacity.
Yeah, the problem with those left turn lanes, Ted, and it concerns me, is that it allows traffic that's going straight to go faster.
Oh, yeah, it's
And right in those areas where we want traffic to slow down and be careful, because we have no sidewalks and no place for bikes or pedestrians to walk at all. And that's exactly where they want to put turn lanes so that they can speed up traffic, which of course makes sense if you're in a car and if you're looking strictly from a vehicular point of view. But hopefully that's changing. And Jeff Bartel, I don't know if you've heard anything more from the Bicycle Advisory Committee, but this is the last I heard. They went to the Board of Supervisors and asked for money to do to revise their plan, their bike plan. It hasn't been revised since 2016. It's supposed to be updated every 5 years. Hasn't been done. So they asked the Board of Supervisors for funding to do a revised plan, and the Board of Supervisors staff said no, because we want to see you change to an active transportation committee instead of just a bicycle advisory committee. So that means adding in pedestrians along with cyclists. And so they want to do that, but now it's just put another, hold on them getting any revision done to the current plan. Changing to an active transportation committee takes a lot of money. Who knows if they'll come up with the money to do it.
No, you and I, I think heard the same thing, that they want to go to an ATC, and it's just a roadblock for getting the bike plan updated.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's true. All right. Well, I think we're at the end of our agenda, unless anybody have any public comment. I mean, go ahead, Jim.
I just wanted to say to Jeff Krabs that the street sweepers came by Cabrillo Estates today. And every time I see one of those now, I think of you and your discussion of street sweeping in Los Osos. So, they're back. I just wanted to let you know.
Well, you give them a call and you'll get one of the yellow trucks out special the next couple days if you see a problem. One other, on another serious thing, back on the safe street thing, I would hope we could encourage Public Works perhaps to attend one of our meetings here. They went through some criteria, whether we were doing good or medium or poorly, where improvements could be made. And in that metric table, frankly, I didn't fully understand some of the things they thought we were doing good on. And perhaps that table, a lot of it came from, I think, Public Works input. And it'd be good to kind of walk through some of that and perhaps some of these ideas as well on these 3 projects. And they can kind of tell us what's practical and what's not, and what we might have to do more work on to get them to achieve them. But a workshop or a meeting or something with them would be really good.
Okay. I will be asking for that. Dave and Bev.
Hi, it's Dave again. I just wanted to say, in connection with the lady waiting to cross the street there in Montana, and also with Jeff's comments about slow your roll. I mean, it's not just for safety for the people who are now bicycling and walking on our roads. It's to encourage people to want to bicycle and ride on our roads. So the fact that people aren't out there in the numbers that would make sense is part of our objective, to increase that. And
Yep.
the way to do that is to increase comfort in being out there.
Yep. Well, and I think that's where they talked about possibly an island, putting an island out there. What did they call it? A safety island or something, like, like a safe harbor in the middle of the street. So if you had to, stop if a car wasn't going to, give you the right of way, you'd have a safe place to stand. So I think that's really important there. We have so many people who want to walk, and obviously they're walking right into, Montana de Oro and behind the golf course and stuff. So, all right. Any other comments? Now, I want to bring this up. If you want to be part of this committee, there are a couple of forms that you have to sign. It's a form that says we will be civil, we will not raise our voices, we'll, have respect for diverse opinions. And we do ask you to sign that form. And so, Dave and Bev, I know you had an issue. It used to be that if you were on a committee, you signed a form that said you will support LOCAC decisions. That's been taken out. So if you have a different opinion from what LOCAC has, then you're not bound by that in any way. The only thing we're asking people to sign to be a part of the committee is that you sign the civility policy. So can I have a raise of hands of people who actually want to be on the committee? And I will make sure that you have a copy of that if you don't already have it.
Quick question though, you do have a minimum attendance requirement, correct?
Nope.
There's no
There's not.
Oh, I thought there was a minimum. You've taken that away.
Uh-huh. So let me see. I have Tom Cross. Seamus, you raised your hand. Ted, Ted, you're raising your hand. Both Bartels. Oh, wait, is that two hands or one? Or was that just Jeff's big hand?
Trish's hand is up, but she's out of the screen.
Okay, thank you, Jeff Krebs. You're you're in. All right, and Ted, I have you, and Dave and Bev, you're still not a committee members, but you always come to the committee, and I always appreciate your comments. All right, so I will make sure that I send out to you this little policy thing, and you look it over, and if it sounds okay with you, sign it, and then you'll be official members of this committee. Anything else?
Nice to have Ted join the committee. Thank you.
Yes, Ted,
Looking
welcome.
forward to having you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And
Glad to be
Deborah-
involved.
Deborah,
And-
this is Deb. I just want to say thank you for your work and finding out. And
What?
good work. Appreciate it.
oh, thank you, Bev. I appreciate your comment very much. All right, so take pictures if you see something that needs to be addressed. We want to stay on top of our maintenance, and some of those things we can get done very easily just by making a phone call if we bring it to their attention. So, all right, you guys have a good evening. Thank you very
You
much.
too.